On the day I turned 38, I received the most unimaginable gift, my grandfather's $75 million company. Please stay with me as I tell you my story, and please do not forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing with your loved one. My grandfather wasn't just a businessman, he was a force of nature. Raised during times when hard work wasn't optional, he built everything from nothing. Growing up, I spent weekends watching him work, always focused, always composed. He taught me not just business, but character. Success without integrity is failure in disguise, he once told me. He never treated me like a kid. Every conversation was a lesson. He let me into his world, not because I demanded it, but because I earned it. When others took shortcuts, he reminded me that real leaders stay steady under pressure. I admired him more than anyone. The same couldn't be said about my wife's family. They never respected where I came from. Her mother was all surface, always smiling at parties, but cold when the doors closed. Her father rarely spoke to me unless it was to correct or dismiss. And her brother? Always chasing the next big thing, always failing upward. Still, they placed him on a pedestal like he was some prodigy. The night of my birthday party felt magical at first. My wife had gone all out, music, lights, a room full of important faces. Everyone was laughing, toasting, celebrating. Then, Grandpa raised his glass and cleared his throat. "I'm officially retiring," he said. "And I'm proud to announce that the future of the company lies with someone I trust with my life, my grandson." The room hushed. He smiled, placed a folder on the table in front of me, and said, "From today, it's all yours." My heart nearly stopped. I didn't expect it. The applause was overwhelming, but in that moment, I caught something strange. My wife's expression had shifted. Her eyes weren't on me, they were on her brother. She barely spoke after that. I brushed it off at first, thinking she was surprised. But an hour later, her family asked to speak with me in private. We stepped outside into the cold night air. Her mother's face was serious. "David should take over," she said flatly. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. But her father nodded. "You're not ready." "He is. I'm the owner," I said. "That's final." Her mother's tone hardened. "Then leave my daughter. Right now." My wife stood silently, watching everything unfold without protest. Just then, from the edge of the patio, Grandpa appeared. He had been listening all along, leaning on his cane like it was part of the act. Slowly, he started clapping. Once. Twice. He looked directly at me, his eyes sharp. That's when he said, "I was waiting for this moment." I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the argument, not even because of the threat. It was the realization that something far more deliberate had been unfolding, something I hadn't dared to see until now. The next morning, I couldn't stop thinking back. The signs were there, scattered like broken glass across the year. I just didn't connect them. Her mother's constant disapproval wasn't passive, it was tactical. Her father's silence wasn't indifference, it was judgment. And David was never just a nuisance. He was methodical. I remembered the first time we all had dinner together after my wife and I got engaged. Her parents asked about my family, then exchanged glances when I mentioned my dad worked as a mechanic. Her mother laughed and said, "Well, I guess that's honest work at least." I laughed too. I thought it was a harmless comment. It wasn't. It was the beginning. David didn't even try to hide his contempt. He used to call me small-time Sam when my wife wasn't around. The first few times, I thought it was a bad joke, but it kept happening, and when I brought it up to her, she said, "That's just how he is." I tried to let it go. I loved her. I believed the foundation of our relationship was stronger than their dismissive stares or condescending remarks. But as I now saw everything clearly, I started wondering, what if this marriage was never about love? There were moments that haunted me now. Her eagerness to introduce me to her family's business contacts, not mine. The way she always insisted we live close to her parents. How every major financial decision somehow involved her father's advice. I thought she was just family-oriented. But maybe I was just the pawn they needed to get closer to Grandpa's empire. One afternoon, a few years ago, Grandpa sat with me in his study. He was sipping his tea, staring out the window. Then he said something I didn't understand at the time. "Watch out for their masks. Some smiles have daggers behind them." Back then, I assumed he was talking about his own corporate rivals. But maybe he wasn't. The memories came flooding back. Every odd comment Grandpa made about trust. Every time he made me take lead on something, and then watched carefully, like he was grading a test I didn't know I was taking. Maybe he always saw it coming. There was one particular instance, about a year before this birthday, when Grandpa asked me to review a vendor contract, something his own lawyers could have easily handled. He told me, "Consider this homework. Read between the lines, not just the words." The contract had a hidden clause that would have cost the company a fortune if signed. I flagged it. He said nothing then, but I caught the rare nod he gave me before changing the subject. It wasn't a random test. It was one of many. I began to understand. This betrayal didn't start at the birthday party. It started long before that. Slowly, carefully. The setup was long, and now the play had begun. That evening, still trying to piece things together, I opened my nightstand drawer to grab a pen. Something slid against my fingers, an envelope. Unmarked, cream-colored, tucked in the back corner. It wasn't mine. And that's when I found Grandpa's envelope hidden in my drawer. The envelope was thick, heavy with intent. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding it like it might explode. No markings, just my name, handwritten in Grandpa's precise lettering. I broke the seal, heart pounding. Inside was a folded letter on his personal stationery and a stack of documents. I read the letter first. "If you're reading this," it began, "then the moment I anticipated has come to pass. I knew they would try something. I just didn't know when. But I trust you knew how to hold your ground." His words sent a chill through me. He'd expected this. Not vaguely, not hypothetically. He'd seen it coming in full color. And he'd acted on it. The next page was a legal declaration, signed and notarized. It detailed a transfer of control, with language far more powerful than anything he announced publicly. This wasn't symbolic ownership. This was airtight. It confirmed me as the sole executive authority. But that wasn't all. A final clause tucked near the end laid it bare. In the event of interference, coercion, or unauthorized claims to leadership by third parties, including family, all rights revert solely to the named successor. It was a bomb, a preemptive strike disguised as paperwork. I sat back, the weight of the moment crashing down. Grandpa hadn't just passed me the torch. He'd prepared the battlefield, and then I felt it fear. The quiet kind that doesn't shout, just lingers. What if I couldn't outmaneuver them? What if they dug in deeper? But anger rose too. Hot, silent, clean. Not the kind that lashes out, the kind that sharpens focus. When I came downstairs, my wife was already acting different. Her tone softer. She asked how I was feeling. Said she understood this was a confusing time and a lot to handle. She touched my arm with sympathy. I didn't believe for a second. "David just wants to help," she whispered. I said nothing. Over the next few days, David became a shadow in the office. He moved through departments like he owned the place, requested access to company accounts, held meetings I wasn't invited to, even tried to update the leadership board online. I watched. I documented. I said nothing. Each time he made a move, I filed it away like ammunition. My wife kept repeating the same lines. "You're stressed. You're imagining things. You should take a step back for your health." That last one nearly made me laugh. She wanted me to step aside, just long enough for her family to wedge themselves in completely. But I had Grandpa's documents. I had leverage. I had time. They thought they were playing chess, but I wasn't on the board. I was already off it, watching them move. And I wasn't planning to defend anymore. They didn't know I was preparing for war. I didn't announce myself when I returned to the office. No grand entry. No public statement. I walked through the side entrance with a cap pulled low and my ID badge still active. That was the first win. They hadn't even bothered to lock me out. Inside, the building felt unfamiliar. The energy had shifted. Desks were quieter, conversations shorter. People glanced around before speaking. Fear had crept in, subtle but strong. But some faces lit up when they saw me. Not in celebration, in relief. One by one, longtime employees approached me. Brief nods, quiet words. "I'm with you. Just say the word. They're tearing this place apart." I didn't say much in return. Just enough to let them know I was still in this. Still watching. Still listening. The changes were already showing. David had restructured 3 departments in 4 days. 2 project leads were gone, replaced by his friends from a failed tech startup he once tried to launch. HR had issued new dress codes, and suddenly personal calls were being monitored. Employees who'd worked here for a decade were being treated like interns. But worse, the numbers weren't adding up. One of the finance team members, a woman named Lisa who had been with the company since my grandfather started, flagged me discreetly. "He's moving funds," she whispered. "Unapproved transfers. Marketing budgets are being drained into consulting fees. None of the paperwork matches." I told her to keep her head down. She nodded. I already backed everything up. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law had taken it upon herself to clean house. She was calling department heads and demanding reports, threatening layoffs, and even trying to revoke benefits for staff she didn't like. One morning, she showed up unannounced in the cafeteria, asking who voted for union protections during Grandpa's time. She had no title, no authority, but she carried herself like a queen. Every incident, every overreach, I documented. Quietly, precisely. I had folders, dates, screenshots, voice memos. Every step they took deeper into arrogance, I was there, one step behind them, recording it all. Then came the call. It was Grandpa's lawyer, Mr. Reddick, a man of few words but heavy presence. "Are you ready?" he asked. I knew what he meant. We'd already discussed the legal triggers. At any moment, I could move, file injunctions, freeze assets. Lock them out of the boardroom with a single signature. I looked out the window at the city skyline, fingers tight around my phone. No, I said. Not yet. He paused. Why? Because they're still moving. They're still exposing themselves. And I want every thread unraveled when I strike. He didn't argue, just nodded once through the phone. Then I'll wait for your call. I hung up. Every day, I watched them burn more bridges, disrespect more employees, tarnish everything my grandfather built. But I kept calm. I needed them arrogant. I needed them sloppy. And I needed one final piece. So I waited. Cold. Silent. I said, give me one more week. I spent the next 7 days building my counterattack. Quietly, methodically. This wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about precision. I wasn't going to make a sound until the entire structure fell around them. With Mr. Reddick's help, I filed paperwork to freeze every account David had touched. Payroll, discretionary budgets, slush funds, locked. Any access that didn't trace back to my authorization was revoked within hours. We didn't shut everything down at once. We were surgical, controlled. Next came the assets. Company vehicles, digital infrastructure, legal ownership of all intellectual property. I moved them into new trusts under my name. Some were temporary protections, but enough to give me full leverage if they tried to push back. Every move I made was covered in layers of legal insulation. There wouldn't be loopholes. No technicalities for them to hide behind. It wasn't long before the calls started. First, David. His voice cracked with confusion. The system's blocking me. I can't approve any transfers. Then my mother-in-law, cold and sharp. What exactly do you think you're doing? You're sabotaging your own family's legacy. But the one that hit hardest came later that night, from my wife. She didn't ask any questions. She didn't try to talk. She came straight for the throat. You went behind my back, she hissed, pacing across the living room. You're ruining everything we've built. I didn't respond. You think you're clever? Freezing accounts? You're not saving the company. You're blowing it up. I looked at her, not with anger, but with something colder. Clarity. This company was never ours, I said. You knew that. She narrowed her eyes. You're choosing him over me? I didn't answer. Her silence in the office, her manipulation, the rehearsed concern, it was all theater. And I was done being the audience. Then her parents arrived, uninvited. Her mother came in like she owned the place, followed by her father looking ready to lecture me into submission. You're emotionally unstable, her mother said. You're making dangerous decisions. Her father chimed in. You've always had a fragile ego. You never could handle responsibility. They thought they could shout me into submission, twist my mind. Guilt tripped me into giving up the throne. I listened to it all in silence. And then I smiled. Tomorrow night, I said, cutting them off mid-rant. I've arranged a dinner. My wife blinked. A dinner? I nodded. Just family. Grandpa asked for it. Her mother scoffed. And why would we attend that circus? Because, I said, you'll want to hear what he has to say. Their expressions flickered. Doubt, confusion, something bordering on fear. I invited them all for dinner, just like Grandpa asked. The next evening, they arrived right on time. Dressed well, smiles plastered across their faces, as if the last few weeks hadn't happened. My wife walked in first, wearing the same perfume she wore on our wedding day. Her parents followed, acting as though they'd come for a birthday celebration instead of a reckoning. Grandpa sat at the head of the table, calm as ever, spooning soup like nothing unusual was happening. He greeted them with warmth, almost playfully, as if he hadn't heard every insult, every power grab. They returned the energy. Fake laughter, flattery, forced small talk. Dinner started off civil, but tight. The air was sharp. Every fork clink seemed louder. David didn't show, probably still licking his wounds from the account freezes. My wife kept her hand on mine under the table, but it felt like a trap. Her grip wasn't affection. It was control. Halfway through the main course, Grandpa set his glass down. He looked around slowly, catching each of their eyes one by one. Then he cleared his throat and lifted his wine. I want to propose a toast, he said, voice steady. To family, even when it's fake. Everyone froze. My wife's smile dropped, her eyes darting to her mother. Her father tilted his head, confused. Let me explain, Grandpa continued. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device, a simple voice recorder. He pressed play. At first, only silence. Then their voices. It was her mother whispering. Once he signs over control, we'll ease him out. Slowly. Make it look like his decision. Then my wife. He trusts me. He won't suspect a thing. And her father. We have to move before the old man dies. Once we're in, we lock him out completely. The recording kept going. Room temperature dropped. No one moved. I watched their faces morph. Confidence gave way to horror. My wife looked like she'd seen a ghost. Her mother's eyes darted toward the door. Her father gripped his napkin like it could save him. You recorded us? Her mother finally blurted. No, Grandpa said, wiping his mouth. You recorded yourselves. You forgot who set up the security system. Silence again, thick and heavy. Then slowly Grandpa stood. Calmly, purposefully, he reached into his coat and pulled out the second will. The room was still as Grandpa unfolded the document, the thick cream paper crisp in his weathered hand. His eyes didn't leave theirs as he laid the will flat on the table, right next to his untouched plate. This, he said slowly, is the version of my will none of you were ever meant to see, unless you made yourselves a threat. He pushed it forward with 2 fingers, letting the edge touch the center of the table like it was a loaded weapon. I revised it 2 years ago, after certain behaviors made me question intentions. He glanced briefly at my wife, who immediately looked down. He continued, everything, the company, the properties, the investments, now resides in an irrevocable trust. One I control only until I pass. And after that, my grandson takes full ownership. With no board, no approval, no contest. Her father started to speak, but Grandpa cut him off with a look that could freeze fire. And before you argue, he added, tapping the will, the trust includes a specific clause. If anyone listed in the document attempts to interfere with my chosen successor in any way, financial manipulation, corporate interference, or personal sabotage, they forfeit everything. Permanently. No legal path back. No appeals. Her mother's face collapsed. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her father sat back in his chair, breathing hard through his nose. My wife, her eyes were glassy. She reached out across the table toward Grandpa. You didn't have to do this, she whispered. It was just it got out of hand. He didn't respond. Didn't blink. She turned to me next. I was scared, she said. I didn't want to lose everything. I thought if David took over, it'd be easier. But I never meant for this to go so far. I stared at her, unmoved. You lied, I said quietly. You let them corner me. You watched them strip my authority, and you said nothing. She shook her head, tears now falling. Please, I was confused. I thought they knew better. I never wanted to hurt you. Grandpa took a sip of his wine, unbothered. Forgive me, she said again, voice cracking. Please. Just tell him to remove the clause. Let's fix this. He set his glass down. Still nothing. He wouldn't speak to her. Wouldn't even look at her. It wasn't rage. It was disappointment. And that hurt more. Her mother leaned forward. Surely we can come to a civil agreement. We're family. He looked at her, calm and firm. No, we're not. My wife broke down. She clutched at my arm. Please. Please don't do this. But I said nothing. The power had shifted completely. And they knew it. But I wasn't done yet. I thought I had uncovered everything. The manipulation, the lies, the plot to steal the company. All of it. But what I found next turned everything colder. It started with a strange instinct. A gut feeling. After the dinner, after the will, I couldn't shake the look in her eyes. Not guilt, not remorse, but calculation. Like she wasn't beaten yet. That night, while she slept, I powered on her tablet. The passcode hadn't changed. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Messages, hundreds of them, between her and someone saved as JT Consultant. Only he wasn't a consultant. He was something else entirely. The tone was intimate, personal, beyond business, beyond friendship. Photos, innuendos, meetings scheduled at hotels during times she claimed to be at strategy sessions. One message read, "Once the trust is settled, we move. He's too passive to fight back." Another simply said, "He'll never see it coming." My hands didn't shake. I wasn't surprised. In truth, it made everything else make sense. The coldness. The way she distanced herself the moment Grandpa named me successor. The lack of real support. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a strategy. A complete erasure of me, planned step by step. I didn't confront her. I didn't raise my voice. I simply printed every message, saved every image, and handed it all to my lawyer. Divorce papers were drawn up within days. When she was served, she didn't even flinch. Instead, she turned cruel. "You'll lose the house," she said, smirking. "You'll lose everything. I'll take the kids. Your reputation. Everything you think you've built. I'll burn it down." She didn't beg. She threatened. But what she didn't know, what none of them ever seemed to grasp, was that every time they moved, I had already positioned my defense. I went to Grandpa that same evening. He sat in his office, reviewing a portfolio. I didn't have to say anything. He just looked up, already knowing. "She never loved me," I said. He sighed. "She loved the door I opened, not the man behind it." He reached into his desk and pulled out a black folder, slightly worn at the edges. "What's this?" I asked. "Insurance," he said. "This one will shut her down permanently." I opened the folder Grandpa gave me with steady hand. Inside was a collection of evidence so damning, it felt unreal. Recordings, emails, financial trails, and most importantly, a copy of the prenup I had signed before the wedding. A document she always believed was simple and unenforceable. But Grandpa had revised it quietly, just months before the marriage, and I had signed the updated version, unaware of the hidden protections it carried. The recordings were brutal. Phone calls between her and JT, discussing offshore transfers, plans to create a shell company, instructions to liquidate assets once the trust was secure. It was all there, time-stamped and authenticated. My next move wasn't loud. It wasn't public. I requested a private meeting, just me, her attorney, and mine. Her lawyer showed up confident, flipping through papers with arrogance. He smiled like he had a winning hand, until I slid the folder across the table. He opened it, read the first page, then stopped smiling. I let him read in silence. "My client will need time to review these," he said finally, trying to stay composed. "There is no time," I replied. "She has two options. She signs an uncontested divorce agreement today, forfeits all claims to the estate, the house, and custody. Or, I file these publicly, along with charges." He swallowed hard. "You destroy her. She already tried to destroy me." I left the documents on the table and walked out. Later that night, I heard the fallout. Her parents were furious. Not at me, at her. She'd acted without telling them the full truth. They didn't know about the affair, the offshore accounts, the prenup. When it came out, her father disowned her. Her mother didn't even call. Just vanished from her life. Her support system crumbled in a day. She came to the house one last time. Alone. She didn't scream. Didn't beg. Just stood in the doorway, eyes red but dry. "You planned all of this," she said. "Every move. You knew." I didn't answer. She stepped closer, voice barely above a whisper. "You set this up all along. It's been 6 months since the dust settled. The company is stable, thriving, actually. The toxic changes David forced and are gone. The right people are back in the right places. Our revenue numbers have hit record highs, and morale has returned. Every decision I make now is grounded in the lessons Grandpa spent decades drilling into me." As for him, he finally stepped away, completely. No meetings, no check-ins, no just one more call. He's spending time in the countryside, tending a garden he never had time for before. We still talk every week, but now the conversations are lighter, full of laughter. No business, just life. And somewhere in all this chaos, someone new appeared in my world. She's kind, grounded. Nothing like the facade I lived with for so long. She doesn't care about balance sheets or family empires. She asks about my day and actually listens. She sees me, not the name or the title. And after everything, that feels like the rarest gift of all. I've had time to think, time to feel, time to understand what really happened. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a test. One evening, Grandpa told me the truth. "I saw the cracks years ago," he said. "I didn't know how deep they went, but I needed to be sure you'd stand when it mattered. Not just for yourself, for the people who count on you." He'd orchestrated more than I realized. The will, the trust, even that hidden envelope. It was all part of his final lesson, leadership under fire. And somehow I passed. Now I carry the weight of that legacy, not just as a CEO, but as a man who saw the worst in people and refused to become like them. If you found this story as shocking as I did living it, please support our channel. Like, share, and subscribe. More true stories coming soon.